Lasting Effects of a Near-Death Experience, Part 2. Apologies for being MIA for so long. Life happens. Things come up, and typing these out has been tough, but I wanted to share as much as I can, and I hope these stories can help someone figure out what they're going through, or at least provide some entertainment. I continue to be overwhelmed by the positive responses these stories have gotten. For the next story, we're going to skip ahead a few years, as the years directly following my accident were nearly completely devoid of experiences, for reasons I'll discuss below. During the aftermath of the accident that nearly killed me, I was given nearly unlimited access to opioid painkillers. This was years before the opioid epidemic that has ravaged this country, and doctors were giving out Percocet freely. As a direct result, I was addicted to these drugs and spent a number of years dulling my senses. I've come to believe that the drugs were interfering with these abilities that I have, and I can't recall any meaningful experiences throughout this period. In retrospect, I can't help but wonder if dulling these experiences made the drugs feel that much better. Fast forward about 5 years, I've gotten clean. I met a girl who would become my wife and the mother of my child. We had been dating for a few months, and I had been fighting the urge to share this with her. I was falling in love, and I was afraid that she'd think I was crazy and withdraw. For weeks, I had been getting very insistent messages that her late mother wanted me to pass along. She hadn't fully processed her mother's passing, understandably, and she had been coping with destructive behavior up to the point that we met. After weeks of constant pressure when we were together, my ability to fight was waning, and I finally decided that I had to take the risk and tell her about my abilities, even if that meant her pushing me away. I knew that I had to tell her, but I wanted to be sure that I approached the conversation in a way that would give me the best chance of convincing her without pushing her away. I decided that asking her mother to share something with me that I could use to validate the fact that I was telling the truth would give me the best chance. It would have to be something that I could never know, that no one else could know. Being in proximity to the living person sharpens the messages and provides better clarity, so I decided that the next time we were together, I would speak with her mother and ask her to give me something indisputable. A few hours later, I was sitting in her bedroom with her, and I worked up the courage to get it over with. I went through a typical exercise I used to open up. I can share that if anyone is interested later. Usually, thinking of a deceased person brings them to me, and this day was no different. I asked her mom to share something unique with me and held myself open to receive whatever she decided to share. 2 things happened immediately. Firstly, I was overwhelmed by a floral scent, which her mother told me was a blackberry-scented lotion she loved and wore every day. Secondly, I immediately began rubbing the pad of my pointer finger and thumb compulsively. Her mother didn't explain this, but assured me that it would mean something to her. Now came the tricky part. How do I start this conversation? If you have a gift like mine, or think you might, you may have found yourself asking a similar question. It's a constant struggle. I fought with it for about an hour and finally decided to go for broke. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like this. So listen, the next few minutes are going to be strange. I need you to hear me out, and then if you want me to leave, I will. She was obviously concerned, but agreed to hear me out. So I continued. You know about the accident I was in when I was a teenager. You've seen the scars, but there's one other lasting symptom. Since that day, I've gotten messages from the other side every day. Every time we're together, I have someone trying to get through to you, and I can't fight it anymore. I'm afraid this will scare you away, but I have to share this with you if we're going to be together. To her credit, she assured me that she could handle it and knew me well enough to know that I wasn't crazy or a liar. I decided to come right out and say that I was speaking with her mother because I wanted her to make that connection on her own. She told me to go right ahead, and I started with the scent. I told her that I was overwhelmed by the scent of blackberries. She was immediately crying. She went to the bathroom and rummaged around under the sink for a while. She came back with this bottle of the lotion that her mother had when she died. She wasn't able to bring herself to throw it away. She opened up the little bottle and we both sniffed it. I confirmed that this was the smell I was getting. Then I showed her the finger and thumb thing. She laughed out loud and smiled huge. Her mother had used this gesture to poke fun at her grandmother, who was always fondling a rosary using this same motion. She got a good laugh out of this, and I could not have asked for better validation. Her mom really nailed it. I took this to mean that her mother approved of our relationship. Those on the other side can see all our deepest secrets and have full transparency into our lives. The fact that her mother helped me convince her that I was telling the truth meant a lot to me, as she could have easily sabotaged me if she didn't want us together. I spent the rest of the night facilitating a conversation between my girlfriend and her deceased mother, which was long overdue, and helped her grieve in a way that she hadn't been able to before. We got married in 2013 and welcomed our daughter in 2016. We've been happily married for nearly 10 years, and her mother is a constant presence in our house. I don't know why she would have wanted you to leave. I would love to hear from my best friend again. It's like a miracle. Very cool you could do that for her. I think some people react very poorly to people who can communicate with the other side. I've had an acquaintance who can do this. At a party several years ago, I mentioned my deceased brother in conversation. She said that he was above me. Later, she asked me if her having told me that bothered me and that some people would think she was crazy. That hadn't been how I felt at all, but in fact I was both surprised and tongue-tied. You mentioned that once people have passed over, they know all secrets and see full transparency. This is spooky because before my dad died, I always used to tell him that he'd know the truth when he'd die. I was a kid at the time, no more than 7, and used to get blamed for a lot of things I didn't do. He had an illness which killed him not long after. It's something that I always preached when I was a kid, that in death, you'd see everything for what it really was. It just gave me the shivers that you mentioned that. About 10 years ago, my best friend/roommate passed away suddenly in a car accident. He was leaving a mutual friend's house to see his ex. Over the last year of his life, we spent a lot of time together because we were roommates and things became very intimate, emotional, and sexual. But things just never progressed for so many reasons. The main being that we were both quite young and on different pages. He died, leaving me with a lot of unanswered questions. Well, every few years I see him in my dreams. I can smell him, I can feel him. He acts like I'm so silly for missing him so much because he's been around the entire time. When it happens, I don't want it to end. I wake up feeling like I just spent so much time with him. Lasting Effects of a Near-Death Experience Part 3. I wanted to take a second to remind you guys that these are 100% true stories of my experiences dealing with the aftermath of my near-death experience. I realize it could be easy to look at this stuff as fiction, but I'm doing my best to share my true experience because I think more people deal with similar experiences than we realize, and I think that it's part of my life's work to spread the word that existence doesn't end when life does. In this post, I wanted to share 2 things. Firstly, I wanted to share some insight on how this communication works for me and why it isn't always super easy for me to interpret, as you might imagine. Secondly, in my most recent post, I made mention of an exercise I use to open myself up when I plan to work with someone on the other side, and I'll share that exercise with you. I've really enjoyed reading all your comments and interacting, so please don't be shy. How do spirits communicate with me? People often ask me if I see dead people, and thankfully the answer is mostly no. Every once in a while, I'll see a person on the street that looks different to me, really hard to explain, and after asking my wife, she will tell me that she didn't see anyone matching my description. This most often happens to me in the car for some reason, no clue why. People also ask me if I hear audible voices, and again, thankfully the answer is mostly no, with some exception. In general, spirits don't speak to me at all. Most commonly, spirits insert imagery into my head that they mean to be representative of the concept that they want me to share with their living friend or relative. As an example, if a deceased father was a mechanic in life, he may show me a wrench or a car or something else that he thinks will make sense to his child. If a person was a drug addict in life and that played a role in their death, they might show me a syringe or some paraphernalia. I also have some empathetic abilities, so a spirit might impress upon me the feeling of love, guilt, or anything else they want their loved one to understand. My particular gifts are not great with names or numbers. It's very rare that I will completely and correctly get a name. Much more commonly, I'll get a first initial or a nickname or something else that validates for the person I'm reading and communicating with that specific person. Numbers are also tricky. As an example, if someone asks me how old a loved one was when they passed, the best I can generally do is a range. This person was a teenager, etc. People often ask me for guidance on the future, and my personal experience has been that the other side has very little to offer as it relates to the future. I believe that the future is too variable and based on individual choice for any accurate or consistent prediction. That being said, I've heard that other mediums claim the ability to predict the future to one extent or another, and I think that it's totally possible. That isn't, however, my personal experience. I sure do wish my guides would share the Powerball numbers with me, though. My gifts are super visual in my mind, so as a result, I have had an abnormally high level of success describing people and places that I've never seen or been to. One complication, though, is that spirits must describe themselves, and often describe themselves as they were when they were younger and more self-confident. In rare instances, a spirit will show me what they looked like near death, if doing so will help validate for their loved one, but that is rare. More commonly, a person who died in their 50s might show me an image of them in their 30s. This can at times make it harder to validate if I'm describing a fit man with black hair in his 30s, but the person's husband passed away with gray hair in his 60s. That can be understandably confusing. It's important to keep in mind that each person's gift is unique and each medium is giving different gifts. My gifts require a high level of interpretation at times, which complicates things for me. The opening of many doors. This exercise is one that I've developed in the 17 years I've been dealing with this. First, a quiet, comfortable place helps immensely. You can do this anytime, any place, but doing it in a quiet, dark room will help. I close my eyes and picture a door in my mind. I spend a substantial amount of time visualizing an extremely intricate door. I think about the details, the hardware, the embellishments, everything. I imagine this door standing in a black void with no consideration to where this door may be. Once I have a very clear and detailed image of the door in my mind, I imagine myself stepping forward, opening the door, passing the threshold, and pulling the door closed behind me. Once on the other side of this first door, I imagine a second, completely different door. I repeat all the steps above numerous times until I've passed through many different doors. I believe that each of these doors represents an increasingly deep level of consciousness. The number of doors or amount of time spent on the exercise varies depending on my level of focus, environment, and mental state, but I normally spend between 10 and 30 minutes doing this before I attempt to read someone. I know that I'm down when spirit messages begin coming through loud and clear. It's important to note that this exercise can also work in reverse. If I'm feeling particularly overwhelmed, I will use this exercise to quiet things down. The only difference when I'm trying to close is I will imagine doors starting with the doors open, and I will step through and close them behind me. I don't normally do this after every reading, but after a particularly emotional reading or a very loud day, I may use this to wind down and protect myself. Let me know if you all have any questions about this. I'm an open book and enjoy speaking freely about this stuff immensely. As you imagine, the number of people I speak to about this in real life is rather limited, as many people are completely skeptical about this kind of thing. I will say that while there are quite a few instances of what seem to be a true medium reading, there are some telltale signs of cold reading, such as the limitation with names and only being able to give shorter names or the first initial, which can be used in some fake mediumship instances to trick patrons into giving out more information and seeking validation with the medium. The exercise you do really struck a chord with me. Have you ever heard of Neville Goddard? He's a teacher of law of attraction type stuff, but he goes much deeper than most, and it's mainly about how our imagination is extremely powerful, and that we can imagine things we want. Kind of how you open yourself up to the other side. I'm not sure I believe all he says, but it definitely resonates with me, and I've found some success with it when I've actually tried it. I have several questions. With this ability, I'm guessing you've developed a certain degree of insight over time. What's your perception or understanding of what happens after? Do you think we pretty much continue on without our physical bodies? Do you think what we understand as consciousness blends with something greater or returns to some kind of collective? Are there different levels of consciousness? Do you know or think that people can choose to reincarnate? I'm sorry for all the questions, but it's the eternal question, and for myself, the only thing that seems to make sense and cover most belief systems is the idea of some collective consciousness or higher mind of which we're all a part. But I haven't had your experiences or contacts with the other side, so I was curious as to how your experiences have shaped your understanding of that. Unfortunately, the storyteller never got back to that question. I have to ask because you shared specifics about the information you receive, and you mentioned you are highly visual. You say that you get visuals from a deceased person when describing their profession. If this is the case, if they have the ability to show you a wrench, and you mentioned that as an example, why would it be more difficult to show a name or a number? In my mind, that would be important to convey to a person, and it would help them believe that they really are there. So why so difficult? Why orders of magnitude of difficulty in conveying information? This is a great question, and one I've spent a lot of time thinking about. The best answer I can give is that there appears to be some kind of language barrier between this side and the other. Some spirits are really good at communicating and give me better information. There appears to be a link between the length of time since their passing and communication skill, which supports this hypothesis. I can tell you that in most cases it takes between months and years for a spirit to learn how to communicate at all. At the end of the day, I wish I had a better answer, but it's a mystery to me as well. How would Anne, in your original story, have been able to speak to you then if she was only dead for a few days? Another good question, and another one I wish I could answer and can't. These are fair callouts and should give you some insight into my own thoughts. The inconsistency and lack of clear rules is high on the list of reasons I even wonder sometimes if this is real. After 17 years of indisputable experience, I still doubt them often. If you study remote viewing as I have, you'll see a very similar thing. I suspect because the level of consciousness or subconsciousness is not really connected to the higher functions of the brain that can do math, letters, numbers, etc. So, in remote viewing, for example, there are ways to show a location, but they seem incapable of saying 433 Elm Street. They can show the location or picture of an elm tree, but they can't seem to show the address. I was just wondering, when you do your exercise, do you visualize in first person or in third person, like you're seeing yourself open the doors from an outside view? I imagine the exercise in first person, but I'm not sure if it would matter. I think you could imagine stairs or ladders. I don't think it makes a difference. This has been so helpful for me. I experience spirits in the same way, and I have never had anyone else describe it quite like this. I'm met with feelings in my body and colors or images in my meditations, and parts of my chakras will feel activated, and then I'm suddenly met with information about a person, place, or situation. Today I gave a reading for a client, and a spirit visited me for that client. I never encountered that specific situation before, and it was such an amazing experience. And it began as an interpretation of all these feelings and sensations in my body. I was able to make out the spirit wanting to say he loved the client. He kept trying to tell me. I felt like a constant pulling on the left side of my body. Eventually, I told the spirit I'm not a medium and I need to hear or see things louder to understand further. At which point, a card turned over with a word on it that affirmed everything for my client. Once affirmed, the entity had left. This was Dante Calvino. Let me know what you thought of the format for these stories, or if you have one of your own to tell. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more mystery every week.